The security camera footage would later show the exact moment everything changed. Maria's hands were trembling as she reached for the baby carrier, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, Senora, please stop." But Vanessa Hartwell, fiancée of tech billionaire Marcus Chen, didn't stop. What happened in the next 45 seconds in that Beverly Hills nursery would make headlines across 3 continents. Maria had worked for the Chen family for only 6 weeks. She needed this job desperately. Her daughter's medical bills were piling up back in Guatemala. When she arrived that Tuesday morning, little Emma, Marcus's 8-month-old daughter from his previous marriage, was crying in her crib. But it was Vanessa's face that made Maria's blood run cold. The woman was standing over the baby with a small bottle, her expression blank and terrifying. Every morning for those 6 weeks had followed the same careful routine. Maria would arrive at the sprawling Bel Air estate at exactly 6 o'clock, entering through the service entrance where the other staff members gathered for their assignments. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, a stern British woman who had worked for wealthy families for 30 years, would distribute the day's tasks. Maria's responsibilities were simple: care for baby Emma while Marcus attended his endless business meetings and Vanessa pursued what she called her philanthropic endeavors. But this Tuesday morning felt different from the moment Maria stepped through the mansion's doors. The usual morning sounds were absent. No coffee brewing in the industrial kitchen. No murmur of the security team changing shifts. Even the ornate fountain in the entrance hall seemed quieter, its water trickling rather than flowing. Maria climbed the curved marble staircase, her worn sneakers silent against the plush carpet runner, and walked down the east wing hallway toward Emma's nursery. The nursery door was slightly ajar, which immediately struck Maria as wrong. Marcus was obsessive about security, especially regarding his daughter. The door was always either fully open when staff were inside or locked when Emma was sleeping. Maria paused, her hand hovering over the brass doorknob, and that's when she heard it, Emma's cry, but muffled, as if something was covering her mouth. Maria pushed the door open and froze. Vanessa stood beside Emma's antique crib, her back to the door, her shoulders rigid. She was wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than Maria earned in 6 months, her blonde hair perfectly styled even at this early hour. But it was what she held in her hand that made Maria's heart stop, a small amber bottle with a handwritten label. "What are you doing?" Maria had asked, her broken English failing her in panic. The words came out rough, desperate. Vanessa turned slowly, and that's when Maria saw the label on the bottle clearly. It wasn't formula. It wasn't medicine prescribed by Emma's pediatrician. It was chloroform, the same substance Vanessa's late father, a veterinarian, had kept in his clinic for animal procedures. Maria knew this because Vanessa had mentioned her father's practice during one of the rare moments she'd acknowledged Maria's existence, showing off a photograph in the library where rows of medical supplies lined vintage wooden shelves. Maria's instincts screamed danger. Everything Mrs. Patterson had taught her about staying invisible, about never questioning the family, about keeping her head down to protect her precious job, all of it evaporated in that moment. She stepped forward, her body moving before her mind could catch up, positioning herself between Vanessa and the baby. "No, Senora. I cannot let you." Emma's cries grew louder behind her, and Maria could hear the baby's small fists beating against the crib's padded sides. The sound cut through Maria like knives, reminding her of her own daughter Sophia's cries during those terrible nights in the Guatemala City Hospital when the doctors said they couldn't operate without payment upfront. Vanessa's perfectly manicured hand shot out, gripping Maria's wrist with surprising strength. The bottle tilted dangerously in her other hand, the liquid inside slushing against the glass. "You're just the help," she hissed, her breath smelling of the expensive peppermint tea she drank every morning. "Marcus will believe whatever I tell him. This baby ruins everything. The prenup, the inheritance, everything I've worked for." The words hung in the air like poison. Maria had heard whispers among the staff about the prenuptial agreement, about how Marcus's late wife had inherited a trust that would pass to Emma, about how Vanessa's lifestyle, the private jets, the designer clothes, the charity galas where she posed for photographers, all depended on Marcus's continued devotion. But Maria had never imagined this level of desperation, this depth of calculated cruelty. Maria's mind raced through her options like shuffling cards. She was undocumented, a fact that Vanessa surely knew from the household records. She was powerless in every way that mattered in this world of wealth and privilege. If she screamed, who would come? Mrs. Patterson was off today. Maria remembered her mentioning a doctor's appointment. The security team rotated their indoor rounds and might not pass by for another 20 minutes. Marcus was in Tokyo on business, unreachable for hours due to time zones and back-to-back meetings with Japanese investors. She was a ghost in this glittering world, invisible except when needed to change diapers or warm bottles or sing lullabies in Spanish that Emma seemed to love. Her hands were rough from years of cleaning work, her visa had expired 3 months before she was hired, and her entire life could disappear with a single phone call to immigration authorities. Vanessa knew all of this. The knowledge gleamed in her cold blue eyes like a weapon. But then Maria thought of her own daughter, thousands of miles away in her sister's cramped apartment in Guatemala City. Sophia, who was 7 years old and needed surgery for a heart defect that grew more dangerous with each passing month. Sophia, who asked when Mama was coming home, who didn't understand why Maria had to leave, who drew pictures of them holding hands that Maria kept folded in her uniform pocket. And something fierce awakened inside her. This baby, this tiny life with her father's dark eyes and her mother's dimpled chin, deserved a chance to grow up, to draw pictures, to ask questions, to live. Emma deserved a mother's love, even if that mother was gone. She deserved protection from the monster standing in designer silk, holding death in a pretty bottle. Maria looked at Vanessa's face and saw something she recognized, the desperation of someone who would do anything to survive, to get what they wanted, to climb higher no matter who fell beneath them. But there was a difference. Maria's desperation pushed her to work harder, to sacrifice more, to give everything for her child. Vanessa's desperation had twisted into something dark and unforgivable. What Maria did next would save Emma's life and expose a conspiracy that reached far beyond one woman's jealousy. Instead of backing down, she grabbed her phone, the same phone Marcus had given all staff members for emergencies, and pressed record. "Say that again, Senora," Maria said quietly, her voice steadier now. "Tell me again why you want to hurt this baby." The phone felt heavy in Maria's hand, heavier than it should have been. It was a simple smartphone, nothing fancy, but Marcus had insisted every staff member carry one after a kitchen fire the previous year. He'd programmed emergency numbers into each device himself, his fingers flying across the screen while he explained protocols to the assembled household workers. Maria remembered thinking how strange it was that a billionaire would take time to do something so mundane, so personal. Now that phone represented the only power she possessed in this moment. Vanessa's face twisted, her carefully maintained composure cracking like fine porcelain struck by a hammer. Her eyes, which had always been cool and assessing during their brief interactions, now blazed with something primal and dangerous. She lunged for the phone, her silk robe billowing behind her, her bare feet silent on the nursery's plush carpet. "You stupid woman," she spat, her voice rising to a pitch Maria had never heard before. "Do you think anyone will believe you? Do you think that video means anything?" But Maria was quicker. 6 weeks of dancing around this enormous house, learning its layouts during those early morning hours, had taught her every corner and corridor. She dodged Vanessa's grasping hands, pivoting on her heel while clutching Emma against her chest with her free arm. The baby's crying intensified, her small body warm and trembling against Maria's uniform. Emma's fingers tangled in Maria's dark hair, pulling hard, but Maria barely felt it. She was already racing toward the panic button near the nursery door, the red button that Marcus had shown her during her first day orientation. "You want to know why?" Vanessa screamed behind her, and Maria realized with a shock that the woman was following her confession with more details, as if the dam had broken and everything was flooding out. "Because I researched the chloroform dosage for months. I consulted my father's old veterinary journals, calculated the exact amount for an infant her size. It would look like SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. No one questions SIDS. Babies just stop breathing sometimes, everyone knows that." Maria's finger found the panic button and pressed it hard. The silent alarm would alert the security team immediately, sending them rushing to this location. But Vanessa kept talking, her words tumbling over each other in a torrent of rage and twisted justification. Marcus's $400 million fortune would be mine alone if she was gone. All of it. The prenup says I get nothing if we divorce before 5 years, but if I'm his grieving wife, supporting him through tragedy, staying by his side while he mourns his daughter, I'd become irreplaceable. And the trust Emma's mother set up, it reverts to Marcus if Emma dies before age 18. Don't you see? It's perfect. Maria backed toward the door, her eyes never leaving Vanessa's face. Behind the rage, she saw something else now, a desperate kind of calculation, the look of someone who had convinced themselves that murder was merely a business decision. The phone continued recording, capturing every word, every admission, every piece of evidence that would later make prosecutors' jobs almost effortless. "The car accident," Maria whispered, puzzle pieces falling into place in her mind. "Emma's mother. Mrs. Chen. That was you too." Vanessa's laugh was brittle and sharp. "Finally, someone understands. Yes, brilliant Maria, yes. Amanda Chen didn't die in a random car accident. I put sedatives in her coffee that morning. The same sedatives I was going to use on this brat before I found my father's chloroform. Amanda was drowsy, her reaction time was slow, and when that truck ran the red light, she couldn't swerve fast enough. The police called it tragic timing. The toxicology report showed traces of the sedative, but they assumed it was medication she'd taken after the impact, something the paramedics gave her. The confession poured out like poison from an infected wound. Vanessa detailed how she'd met Marcus at a charity gala 6 months after Amanda's death, how she'd carefully positioned herself as exactly what a grieving widower needed: beautiful, understanding, interested in his work but not threatening to his memory of his late wife. She described manipulating mutual friends to engineer repeated meetings, researching his interests to become his perfect companion, even learning basic Mandarin to impress his traditional grandmother. I've been planning this for over a year, Vanessa continued, and Maria realized the woman was so far gone in her fury that she couldn't stop confessing. Every smile, every tender moment, every time I pretended to care about his boring technology ventures, it was all leading to this. To becoming Mrs. Marcus Chen, to accessing wealth beyond anything my family ever had, to never worrying about money again. Heavy footsteps thundered in the hallway. The security team burst through the door just as Vanessa's hands reached for Maria's throat. 4 men in dark suits and earpieces swarmed into the nursery, their trained eyes taking in the scene instantly. Maria backing away with the baby, Vanessa advancing with murder in her eyes, the atmosphere thick with tension. The head of security, a former Secret Service agent named Robert Hayes, moved with practiced efficiency, positioning himself between the 2 women while his team secured Vanessa's arms. "Call the police," Maria said in halting English, holding up her phone. "I have video. She confess everything. Everything." Robert's eyes widened as he listened to Maria's explanation. He carefully took the phone, handling it like the precious evidence it was, and stepped into the hallway to make the call while his team kept Vanessa restrained. She had gone silent now, the reality of her situation apparently dawning on her. Her face was pale, her earlier fury replaced by something that looked almost like disbelief. The police arrived within minutes, Beverly Hills law enforcement responding to a billionaire's home with impressive speed. Detectives from the Major Crimes Unit took Maria's statement while she sat in the mansion's library, Emma finally sleeping in her arms after all the chaos. They copied the video file onto multiple devices, maintaining chain of custody with meticulous care. One detective, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, brought Maria tea and assured her that her immigration status would not be a problem, that she was a witness to attempted murder and would be protected. The footage went viral within hours after police released a carefully edited version to the media. News helicopters circled the Bel Air mansion. Reporters camped outside the gates. The story had everything: wealth, beauty, betrayal, an innocent child, and an unlikely hero. Maria's face appeared on every major network, her simple uniform and tired eyes contrasting sharply with the opulent background of the Chen estate. But the real shock came during the investigation that followed. Detectives obtained a warrant to exhume Amanda Chen's body, and forensic experts found traces of the same sedative Vanessa had described. Traces that had been dismissed in the original autopsy as post-accident medication administered by first responders. The medical examiner who had performed the initial autopsy was horrified, immediately cooperating with investigators to review every detail of that day 2 years ago. Phone records revealed Vanessa had contacted her father's former veterinary clinic multiple times in the months before Amanda's death, asking about sedative dosages and effects. Security footage from a pharmacy showed her purchasing over-the-counter sleep aids under a fake name. Her laptop contained extensive research into SID statistics, infant mortality investigations, and even deleted search histories about undetectable poisons. The digital trail she'd left was extensive and damning. At the trial 6 months later, Maria testified despite her fears about public attention and her immigration status. She wore a simple blue dress that Marcus had insisted on buying for her, though she'd protested it was too expensive. On the witness stand, she recounted everything in careful English she'd been practicing with a tutor Marcus had hired. The jury listened in absolute silence as the video played on courtroom monitors, Vanessa's voice echoing through the space with chilling clarity. Marcus used his considerable resources to secure Maria's legal residency through a special visa for crime victims assisting law enforcement. He paid for Sophia's heart surgery, flying her and Maria's sister to Los Angeles where the best pediatric cardiac surgeons performed the operation at Cedars-Sinai. He offered Maria a permanent position not as household staff, but as Emma's full-time nanny with a salary that made her weep with relief and gratitude. Vanessa received 25 years without the possibility of parole. The judge, in delivering the sentence, called her crimes a calculated betrayal of the most fundamental human bonds, and noted that her lack of remorse made her a continued danger to society. Vanessa's family, wealthy in their own right, issued a brief statement expressing shock and disavowing her actions. The tabloids feasted on every detail for months. But Maria never forgot what she told reporters outside the courthouse on that bright California afternoon, with Sophia holding her hand and Emma sleeping in a stroller beside them. I was nobody to them, invisible. But I saw her. I saw that baby needed someone to be brave. Money cannot buy that. Love cannot be destroyed by evil people. I would do it again 1,000 times. Emma, now 3 years old, calls Maria Tia and won't sleep without her nearby. She has Maria's dark eyes in her paintings, always drawing her taller than Marcus, always placing her at the center of their family portraits. Some bonds, forged in the darkest moments, become unbreakable. And sometimes, the most powerless person in the room turns out to be the strongest after all.